Thank you so much, Jill, and thank you both, Jill and Laura, and the entire board for all that you do in putting together this wonderful convention. Hey, I'm Jeff Cohen. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the outgoing chair of the Sexual and Gender Minorities Special Interest Group. Do you want to introduce me?
Yeah, and I'm Alana Seeger-Van Dyke, she, her pronouns, and an ongoing chair of the Sexual and Gender Minority SIG.
So, we're so honored to be asked to present the inaugural Charles Silverstein Lifetime Achievement Award to its namesake, Dr. Charles Silverstein. This is a very special moment in ABCT history. So 50 years ago, at the 1972 AABT convention, AABT is what it was known prior to being named ABCT, as I understand it, Dr. Silverstein, then a graduate student, organized a demonstration against the use of therapies that attempt to change people's sexual orientation, which ultimately led to ABCT's condemnation of these practices and the removal of homosexuality as a diagnosis in the DSM.
So I want to take just a second to think about the context at the time that Dr. Silverstein was doing this really important work as a graduate student. This was 31 years before same-sex sexual activity was legal in all 50 states. 43 years before it was legal to marry a same-gender partner. 49 years before it was legal to serve in the military as an openly LGBT person. This was a time when homosexuality was considered a type of psychopathology and it was listed in the DSM. This was a time when many researchers and clinicians in our own field of behavior therapy were developing and using what we now call conversion therapy to try and change people's sexual orientations. Despite this incredibly hostile environment, Dr. Silverstein decided to take a stand. At this very conference, in this very city, 50 years ago, Dr. Silverstein told behavior therapists to stop harming their gay and lesbian clients by subjecting them to these harmful aversion and conversion therapies, and to view non-heterosexual orientations not as disordered, but as normal. Dr. Silverstein's words were heard by Dr. Jerry Davison, who at his presidential address at the 1974 convention amplified Silverstein's message and forced this organization and our field more broadly to reckon with the reality that the conversion therapies that we've created hurt LGBT people. Silverstein's words were also heard by folks on the nomenclature committee who in December 1972 removed homosexuality from the DSM. Now, as young queer clinical psychologists ourselves, we cannot overstate the importance of Dr. Silverstein's advocacy at such a critical juncture in our field's history. Who knows what this field would look like for LGBT trainees and professionals if folks like Dr. Silverstein had not taken a stand at great personal and professional risk to himself. More importantly, by turning our field away from the professional practice of conversion therapies, Dr. Silverstein has undoubtedly saved countless young LGBT lives. The entire Sexual and Gender Minorities SIG thanks Dr. Silverstein for making a space for us in this field and for all the work he has continued to do for our community since the 1970s. Should I keep going? Yeah, you.
Dr. Silverstein has received numerous accolades for his work on advocating for LGBTQ mental health, including the American Psychological Foundation's Gold Medal Award for Lifetime Achievement in the Practice of Psychology, and American Psychological Association Division 44's Distinguished Professional Contribution Award. He has published 8 books on LGBT topics, including The Joy of Gay Sex, A Family Matter, A Parent's Guide to Homosexuality and Gays and Lesbians and Their Therapists. He founded the Journal of Homosexuality, as well as 2 LGBTQ affirming counseling centers in New York City, Identity House and the Institute for Human Identity. On a personal note, Identity, as I've shared with Dr. Silverstein, Identity House is actually where I had my first experience working with LGBTQ people before grad school, and it really shifted my trajectory and helped me decide to pursue this. I was a peer counselor at Identity House, so I'm very grateful for all that you've done. And for all of the work, Alana and I are so honored to to present you, Dr. Silverstein, with the very first Charles Silverstein Lifetime Achievement Social Justice Award and a card from our SIG.
You are very kind. Is this working? Yes. Good. You know, Betty Davis once said, getting old ain't for sissies. I've often wished that I was a car. I could go out and get a new pair of headlights, a new carburetor, and front and rear bumpers. If you look at this beautiful plaque, you will see only words. But I see faces. The faces of my friends in gay liberation, the faces of people in organizations that we worked for civil rights. Occasionally we fought. Like the face of Frank Kameny, a man who was fired by the government from his job as an astronomer because they found out that he was gay. Like Barbara Giddings, the most extraordinary lesbian I've ever known, who had an extraordinary capacity to develop an emotional bridge between her and whoever she was talking with, until she met my mother. Like Bernice Goodman, a name you will not have heard, who worked with me tirelessly to organize the groups that my comrades over here have talked about. About Roll Arena, the face of Roll Arena, who was a stockbroker during the day on Wall Street, and on gay marches would show up in roller skates and twirl a baton, and he would skate up and down the line of marchers to an enormous applause and throw his baton in the air and rarely catch it. But he provided a great sense of morale to all of us who marched. To some of the leaders of the Gay Activist Alliance who went to a group called the Inner Circle, I don't know whether they still have it. It was composed of the movers and shakers in New York. And they went to demand their civil rights and were beaten up by the fire commissioner of New York while the mayor and the police commissioner looked on and did nothing. And one of our members ended up in the hospital. The next person, the next face I see, you may think strange. He said he was a member of the Swiss Guards, not the Swiss Guards. And he would come to our meetings, never say anything, until one day he decided to run for president. And he got up to make his presidential speech, which was a complete word salad. He was certifiably psychotic, but not dangerously so. And when he finished his speech, the membership got up and gave him a standing ovation. Of course, they didn't vote for him. And the last two, Marsha Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. In those days, we didn't have a concept of gender like we do today. And Marsha and Sylvia called themselves, and they were called by everybody else, drag queens, transvestites, or more pejoratively, just trannies. And they would come to all of our meetings. And they were as welcome as the Swiss Guards, because our group was a place of safety. And because on the other side of the door, of the front door, was a place of danger, where kids were and still are beaten up because they are different. I'm talking about a time when if you were gay, if you were openly gay, and a psychologist, or a lawyer, or a physician, you would be fired from your job. Your license would be revoked because you would be guilty of what was then called moral turpitude. It was a time when New York newspapers published the names and photos, and often the addresses, of men caught in a police raid. And since many of these men were married, the shame that it produced caused some of them to commit suicide. Who were our adversaries in those days, 50 years ago? They were mainly our colleagues, professionals like all of you in this room. Behaviorism wasn't as common as it is today. And many of them used different forms of aversion therapy to cure gay people of their affliction. They didn't succeed, but that didn't stop them from trying and from publishing more papers and more books. So what does this ancient history have to do with today? The right wing has never liked privacy rights. They were appalled at gay marriage. They were equally appalled that perverts, as they called them, would not get jail time. They accused gay people of molesting children. Recently, the Roe decision opened up a Pandora's box of these resentments, and the armies of the political and religious right are marshaling their forces to take back the rest of our privacy rights. But these adversaries, these new adversaries, are politicians who don't care about mental health data. They only want to be elected again, and they can only be fought in the area of voting. That brings me to my main point. Only a unified mental health movement can affect this battle, and that includes this organization. There have been some attacks upon members who 50 years ago were part of the conversion therapy movement. I knew most of them. John Bancroft was appalled at my review of his aversion therapy book, but is now a friend. Kurt Freund in Canada, a leader in aversion therapy, submitted a paper to the Journal of Homosexuality that said, "The only thing I accomplished was to create bad marriages." Jerry Davison, in his '74 presidential address, came out against all forms of sexual orientation change on moral, unethical grounds. The first person to make such a statement. These colleagues were heroic, going against the grain and accused of being gay themselves by their colleagues. But all this happened 50 years ago. I could walk pretty well 50 years ago. We have this new and more dangerous set of adversaries, and we have to stop them. Justice Thomas in Roe said that the 14th Amendment does not refer to privacy. And the late Justice Scalia was against the previous Lawrence decision. He believed that criminalizing sodomy belonged to the states. There are now 6 conservatives on the court. And the death of privacy in the country is now possible. They will go after children first. They always do. Some of you may remember Anita Bryant, the Florida orange juice queen. She went after the children, and in England there was Mary Whitehouse. They always talk about protecting the children. That will be their slogan, that what they're doing is protecting children, when in fact, the children are not in danger at all. They want to stop us. After that, I think they'll come after gay marriage. I know the Congress is working on a bill right now, but that won't make any difference because the Supreme Court can declare it unconstitutional. They will go after same-gender sex. They'll go after books. 2 of my books were censored. I do admit a certain pride. Teachers and mental health professionals will feel their wrath. I know that in New York State and a number of other states, things won't change. But in more conservative states, they will. And state legislators will be able to stomp on privacy rights. And I hope that this organization, together with others, can help to save those rights for all the people. I know that as an organization you can't do that because of your tax status. But every civil rights organization I know of began in someone's living room. And that's where it should start now, of people getting together to help out our colleagues down south and in the Midwest and wherever. We either have to help them or see them go down. I don't want to do that. And I hope you don't either, and I hope that you do something about it. Madam President, members of the board, members of the association, I will cherish this forever. Well, maybe not forever. Thank you so much. It will get a cherished place in my wall. Thank you very much, Stephen. You're not Stephen. I've met so many people here tonight. Thank you very much.